Ratlines. A ratline gets the principal from a place of hostility to sanctuary. While the more common ratline examples of World War II and the Cold War involve grandiose circumstances, the principal's ratline is on a much smaller scale. The principal is not necessarily trying to cross the globe to get away from a coalition of adversarial nations. Rather, he is trying to get to a place where a small and limited adversary cannot reach. If the principal is trying to get away from a contemporary Axis powers, he should reconsider his goals. There is no sanctuary for those who are wanted internationally. For examples, look to Adolf Eichmann and Osama bin Laden. If the principal needs a ratline, then he is working in a small, poor, or rural country, or some desolate subsection thereof. The adversary is often a disorganized, albeit violent, group of criminals or extremists. If the government is cooperating with the adversary due to corruption, a neighboring country may be the principal's sanctuary. However, most of the time the principal will make his way out of the adversary's territory to a friendly or neutral one. It is important to note that when it comes to diplomacy, an embassy will not sacrifice its relationship with the host nation to protect a citizen who broke local laws or customs. If the principal offends the host nation and seeks asylum in his embassy, regardless of how corrupt host nation is, the embassy may turn him over upon request. However, a part of the job of an embassy is to offer information and resources to citizens abroad. If the principal coordinates the ratline well, he can get the help he needs from the embassy and get out of a country before the adversary has time to invoke diplomatic agreements. Once back home, the government would be hard-pressed to extradite the principal for the violations the intended audience of this book would perform. For example, the United States should neither extradite its citizens for proselytizing in a Muslim nation nor exposing the human atrocities of an oppressive regime. If the adversary catches the principal in the act, he should not expect some Tier 1 unit to come to his rescue. However, once he is home, he should not worry the State Department will send him back for capital punishment. If the principal executes a ratline, it is because he received an early warning for imminence of hostility from a resident, embassy, or local news. Often the principal's actions do not lead to compromise. Rather, local behaviors change in such a way mobs or incited extremists target people who stand for what they hate, like Western foreigners. Unfortunately, these threats are not exclusive to just clandestine actors. Anyone who is of the wrong demographic at the wrong place and time would be in danger. If the principal discovers a compromised operation and the principal needs to get from the target area to sanctuary, then a ratline could help. The security during the ratline depends upon hostiles not recognizing or spotting the principal during movement. A ratline seeks to avoid any potential points of encounter by devising routes around them. If the adversary does not know exactly where the principal is, where he is going, how he is getting there, or tracks him faster than he travels, then a ratline may help the principal evade the adversary. A ratline consists of a series of legs, stops, and caches. Legs get the principal closer to sanctuary, stops aid in schedule coordination between movements, and caches supply whatever the principal needs to successfully complete the leg. The adversary will not have enough personnel to support a perfect presence throughout the target area. With proper casing and understanding of the adversary's presence, the principal can capitalize on these gaps through which his routes can slip. Unfortunately, many of these gaps are often in difficult terrain, and depending on the part of the world in which the principal works, some seasons make certain potential routes impassable. The principal plans for this and cases different routes for different circumstances. There are 4 environments which a ratline may traverse: aerial, maritime, urban, and rural. Each have their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as planning and execution considerations. There are always urban and rural components to a ratline. However, aerial or maritime components will heavily depend on the region, the operation, and available support. How Special Operations Forces infiltrate and exfiltrate a denied area are examples of ratlines, albeit not in the conventional sense, nor in a sense many readers of this book may enjoy, unless they have the financial backing. Despite not having the resources or combined personal experience of these organizations, the principal may still learn from their methods. Planning considerations include destination. First, the principal must find exactly where to go. For most hostile environments, it will be a neighboring sovereign that should not extradite the principal back to the hostile area. The The principal must research the target area first and then research the neighboring countries to find those likely to support his mission. The principal should contact his embassy in those friendly and neutral areas and ask them about the host nation, its relationship to the target area, the principal's planned activities, and scheduling and preparation consideration for quickly leaving the target area. Depending on the nature of the operation, the principal may inquire about the penalties of breaking the customs and border protection laws of the sanctuary nation. Spending some time in a friendly jail is better than spending time at the hands of the adversary. Note, embassies do not help in these legal matters, only information gathering, communication, and arranging funds. Departure. The principal considers where he will be when he decides to execute the ratline. The start of the ratline should be around the area he conducts most of the clandestine operations. If the principal plans to work primarily in one area, then his residence and most cover activities should be outside that area to avoid unplanned encounters with residents. In terms of the ratline, the principal will discover that he must use it when he is conducting either counter-surveillance for a resident or during a meeting. If the need to exfiltrate is pressing, but the adversary is not actively pursuing the principal, then he may want to start the ratline immediately instead of returning to his cover life. The starting points must have a cache with the necessary supplies to reach the next cache and should be in areas where he would likely make the decision to leave. Locals. It is significantly easier to garner support for the cause when the adversary is oppressing the people. However, if the principal is working in an area where people are divided on the issue or a majority do not support his goals, then he should not expect much help. Such is the case if the principal is a Christian missionary in a Sharia region. If this is the case and the locals are very effective with gossip, the principal may find it difficult to stay hidden. If leaving the country, the principal may need help with transportation from people in either the host country or a neighboring country. If the ratline needs this type of support, then the principal must find it, build strong and loyal relationships with those who can offer it, and eventually recruit them. Adversary. This is by far the most significant consideration, as this is the ratline's purpose. The principal must understand how the adversary controls access to their areas of interest, how they communicate, their search methods, what means of detection they have in areas the principal passes, and what assets they have and are willing to dedicate to finding him. The route is highly dependent upon this intelligence information. Methods of intelligence collection for this task are elicitation, surveillance, and reconnaissance of the adversary. At this point of the operation, the principal does not have an established ratline, so he must keep a very discreet intelligence campaign to avoid detection. The principal must know 4 elements of the adversary: checkpoints, patrols, observation posts, and reinforcements. Checkpoints are those access control points that the adversary mans to scrutinize the public as they move from one area to another. The most common are at border crossings, seaports, and airports. Furthermore, it is also important to know if the adversary conducts hasty or temporary checkpoints and how that affects their personnel allocation. The principal seeks to understand the purposes of these ad hoc checkpoints, if it is to look for people, discover contraband, or extortion. The principal finds any patterns about when and where the adversary implements them. If there is a clear pattern on which the principal can capitalize, he must plan the route accordingly. However, if it proves difficult to see, then he may wish to take more difficult routes to avoid crossing the adversary. Patrols and observation posts are 2 ways of performing the same task of surveillance. The purpose is to see people or things enter and leave their area of interest. There are second-order tasks associated with these, which is to either interdict the person or thing or notify someone who will make the decision to interdict, document, or ignore. Patrols trade continuous observation for geographic coverage. A patrol's nature is movement, so they can go to areas which observation posts may otherwise be blind. A patrol has a more dynamic perspective, but sacrifices its continuous observation of an area. Conversely, an observation post trades geographic coverage for continuous observation from a desirable vantage point. An adversary may employ patrols and observation posts together. How many and how effective will differ based on the circumstances of the adversary. The observation post handles surveillance at a macro level, and the patrols will check blind spots investigate, and engage any potential threats. When the principal plans the ratline, he finds observation posts and their blind spots and tracks the patrols and their routes and schedules. The principal then finds how these patrols and observation posts might engage him across all environments the principal intends to cross. This may include air support, maritime vessels, surveillance reconnaissance platforms, and so on. This enables the principal to coordinate his route and timing accordingly. Reinforcements are the added personnel the adversary would dedicate to search for the principal. The principal should understand how the adversary would use the added manpower. Some adversaries would send reinforcements to cast a wider net, increase ad hoc checkpoints, increase patrols, or man more observation posts. The principal must figure out what other manpower the adversary has, if any, and how quickly they could mobilize them. As the principal backward plans, he must name key points where he will stop. Each of these key points marks the beginning or end of a leg. Key points will be caches and safe sites. Reasons for setting up a key point are personal endurance. Everyone has limits on how far or long he can do something, and the principal must know his limitations. Therefore, the principal must take into account the frequency and duration of needed rest. Then, the principal can establish caches and safe sites for when and where he needs them. The healthier the principal is, the more resilient he becomes, which saves much time in preparation. If the principal can go 50 miles per day, then the route line will be much simpler and faster than if he can only travel 10 miles per day. In the planning phase, this is theoretical. When the principal prepares the route, this may change based on his experiences. Supply. While the principal always needs food and water, he may need more supplies for different or successive legs. These may include equipment to get through difficult terrain like rappelling rope, machetes, and especially communications equipment like a satellite phone or radio. A benefit of caching is the principal does not need to haul these supplies with him during travel, making it that much easier. Given, the principal trades one type of convenience for another, and that added routine maintenance for additional caches is inconvenient. Environmental changes are transition points. The route line may take the principal through multiple environments. Therefore, he must have the supplies and equipment needed to handle those environments. If the principal transitions from urban to rural, then he needs clothes to blend. If transitioning from land to air, then he needs an airstrip or a clearing for the pilot to land and take off. If transitioning from land to sea, the principal needs swimming equipment, a surfboard or a kayak, and a place from which to launch. Scheduling. This is important for coordinating movement like avoiding adversarial patrols or locals or contacting support residents for ferrying by air, sea, or land. Safe sites satisfy scheduling where the principal can spend as much time as needed without the chances of encountering hostiles. In the urban environment, recruitment may be necessary to elicit aid from a safe housekeeper. A rural safe site allows the same principles outlined in selecting a location for meetings or caches.